call off your name, okay? An angel's gonna grab you and take you shopping. Parents, only thing we ask you to do, allow the kids to shop. We want to reward them for their doing what they were supposed to do in this classroom, okay? Let them shop. If it's something that may be too noisy, too loud for the house, chalk it up. Chalk it up. I'll take the hit on that one, okay? We want to reward them.
Intergalactic planetary, don't you tell me to smile. Don't you tell me to smile. You think I'm gonna make it go wild. Don't you tell me to smile. Don't you tell me to smile. Don't you tell me to smile.
See here how this is Dave's here now? This used to be Save More.
Okay.
This used to be Save More and Pick and Pay. But this area right here, that wasn't closed in. That was actually a walkway, alleyway that led you into the projects. Well, us being managed as kids, we decided to go steal some cookies. We were hungry. Get some cookies. Because we used to have things that we call parties. We used to go into like laundry rooms that was like in corners of our friends' buildings and parents' buildings.
Okay.
And it was warm in there. So that in the wintertime, that's where we would hang out.
Right.
So we would go in there and we would have what we call parties.
Okay.
Which was, we would steal Kool-Aid packets, make some Kool-Aid, steal cookies, chips, or what we also would do sometimes is, back then, we was on our hustle, on our grind. We would go through our buildings and ask the elderly folks if they needed someone to go to the store for them, take their trash out.
Right.
They would give us a nickel, dime, quarter, whatever, but whatever it didn't cover the cost, we would try to snatch it.
Right.
Well, I had some Kool-Aid packets in my waistband, and as soon as I got to the door, that's when they started doing the but this was before they had the checks and all that stuff.
Right,
we walked out.
right.
Well, as soon as I literally got to the door, they fell down through my shorts. And I got skinny legs. So they fell down, and I took off running through here. Back into the project.
So they didn't catch you?
Oh, they didn't. I don't even think they realized what happened.
Okay.
It's just me knowing that I was wrong already.
Right.
As soon as I felt them coming down, I just took off running.
So you lost the stash, though?
Absolutely. Stash was gone, brother. Stash was gone.
So that part of the party was over for the day?
Kool-Aid was gone. We just had to suck it up and do what we normally do.
We're here today with Jarvis Gibson, founder and owner of the Jarvis Gibson Foundation. I just want to thank you for meeting with me today to talk about you. I understand there's a pandemic going on. You work, I work, and we're all just trying to get to know you and everything that you do for the community. So I want to thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for allowing me to be here today. I appreciate that.
That's awesome. So I just want to jump right into it. Can you please tell me how you started the Jarvis Gibson Foundation?
Well, actually, a really good friend of mine seen the work that I was doing. And they came back to me and said, well, you've been doing the work. Maybe you need to think about starting a foundation, because a lot of the work we were doing, we needed funds.
Okay.
So now it's a matter of how do you get the funds? Well, do you go after grants? Do you go after donations? Things like that. So once we started discussing it, then it came back to like, you know what, you need to become nonprofit. If you create the nonprofit agency now or organization, now you can now go after grants. Now when people donate to you, these are tax deductions that you can use, things like that. So then that's when we came up with the idea, the Jarvis Gibson Foundation. And the reason I chose that name is because my son, Jarvis Gibson Jr., I wanted to be able to leave a legacy for him through not only the real estate, but through the foundation as well.
Okay. I think that's awesome. So you said somebody else saw what you were doing and suggested that you start this foundation. So tell me exactly what you do, or what did they see you doing?
Working with the youth. The number one thing that I was doing was working with inner city youth. So when I start working, like say for instance, when I start coaching at South High School, that was near and dear to me because that was my alumni. That's where I came from. That's where I graduated from. So me going back there, and then they seen the things I was doing off the football field with the youth is kind of what spearheaded things. And I want to say it was 2007, 2008 is when we made the city, for the state playoffs. And there was a columnist named Terry Pluto who did a story on me in the program. And once he did the story, it kind of took off to another level. I received emails, letters from people that I didn't even know from all over Northeast Ohio because they had read the story. And then there was one gentleman, and he'll remain nameless, who read the story and then reached out to me. Once he reached out to me, we got to know one another, and then things kind of really escalated and took off.
And so what made you decide to work with inner city youth versus anyone else?
Well, for me, I come from the inner city. I grew up in Longwood Housing Projects. We moved from Detroit to Cleveland when I was about 3 or 4 years old. We lived with some relatives when we first got here, and I want to say maybe I was 6 years old when we first moved into the projects, into Longwood. And just my upbringing, my background, being from the inner city, I always said if I made it out of here, I wanted to come back and help out the place that I came from. I visualize housing projects is you land there because you just land there. But it's only a stepping stone for you to move to the next level. You're not supposed to really stay there. And I believe our journey began there.
We were in need, and then once we got here, Mom had her degree, but once we first got here, it's not like she walked into a job, but she did some applying, and next thing you know, she landed a job with Ohio Bell / AT&T, and then things started changing for us a little bit. I can still remember as a kid, our address was 3736. I'll never forget it.
You'll never forget it.
I'll never forget it, bro. I mean, that's just one of those things that you just don't forget. But this is the new projects where I grew up. This used to be called, so if you said to someone what's down there, they would still call this Longwood.
Okay.
So like I said, I couldn't even tell you what they're called today. I just know when we got to town, once we left Detroit, Michigan, and came down, it was me, my mom, my brother, and this is where we landed.
So you're originally from Detroit?
Yeah, I was born in Detroit.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So why aren't you a Lions fan?
Well, I am, as long as they're not playing Cleveland.
Okay. I like that. I like that.
Same thing when it comes to Michigan. I'm a
Die-hard Michigan fan, as long as they're not playing.
Unless they're playing the Buckeyes.
Right.
That week, if they're playing, I'm a Buckeyes fan.
Okay.
Other than that, I go with Michigan. So go blue.
You coming from the projects and being in that situation, you said you wanted to get out. What did being in that situation look like for you?
Well, here's the thing. As a youth being in the situation, I didn't know I was in a bad situation. Mm-hmm. As long as my comfort level was, my blanket was always my big brother. As long as my big brother was there, I was comfortable wherever I was. So growing up, I didn't know we were in a bad situation. It was, you can call it the projects, but it was home for us. There was many times where my mom wanted to get us out of the projects, and a lot of people don't know that the things that my mom was doing. My mom she always had this motto of, it's not where you live, but it's how you live. Mm-hmm. So I want to say maybe at age 8 or 9, I took cornet, my brother took trumpet, then I took piano, and then I took guitar lessons. A lot of people don't know that. And then probably about 10 years old, we actually took horseback riding lessons. A lot of folks don't know that. But that was my mom's way of, again, it's not where our mind, like our body was there, but she wanted to make sure our mind was not in the projects.
My mom made sure we was always involved in something, man. I was supposed to be in an acting class at Caramoo, but I was too afraid to get on the stage, so that didn't pan out.
We was able to do things outside of the housing projects. And by doing those things, one was because my mom graduated from Alabama State.
Okay.
So we always went down there because they played in the Turkey Bowl for Thanksgiving against Tuskegee Institute,
Okay.
which is now, I believe, Tuskegee University. But we went down there every Thanksgiving. So going back and forth, doing things outside of the housing projects, we were just always involved in something outside of the projects. So honestly, once we moved outside of the projects, we would go back down there every day because that was our comfort zone.
Right.
But then I had to make a decision, and that decision came leaving 8th grade, going into 9th grade. Was I going to go to East Tech? Because that's where most of the kids who grew up down there either went to East Tech or South High School. And I think the decision really came from was I didn't want to go to East Tech. And the only reason I didn't want to go to East Tech, and that was due to what my brother was doing at East Tech. He was just being a managed teenager, becoming a part of the environment. And my mom wanted to get us out of that environment. So I made the decision. And I think my last year of playing Little League football of POW 7 was, do I continue to make weight every week? Or do I go ahead, start lifting weights and go and play high school? But also to get to know the kids in the neighborhood. Because eventually I needed to stop going back down to the projects every day. And that's what ended up happening. So going from 8th grade to 9th grade, I just went ahead and went to East High, played football there. And then that's when life started to change for me a little bit.
And after some years, she ended up taking a buyout. They offered a buyout. Mom took the buyout, and I had to be around 14 at the time because I remember it, where I said to Mom, if you buy me some DJs and turntables, I'll never ask you for a dime again. My mom actually bought me some turntables, some DJ equipment. I started doing house parties here and there. And between house parties and summer snipe jobs, honestly, I can't remember the last time I asked my mom for money. Local parties in the neighborhood, you maybe charge somebody at the at the door $1 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I was, people said today that I'm very frugal with my money. I'm just used to saving.
Right.
Because, if you made some money here, that money had to last me for a while.
Right.
So I had to make sure that money definitely lasted me. And then back then we had summer night jobs. Now I would tell you right here where this church is, Tri-Stone, this has always been here. This is a staple. It's still standing, Tri-Stone Baptist Church.
Mm-hmm.
When they will have the summer services back here, this is where we will come, and these were the projects. And this street right here that we're on now actually went around. This used to actually turn around into a bend. And that bend took you over to where my apartments were. But on this side over here, this used to be parking lot and then apartment buildings. In this parking lot, you see how you got this FedEx truck?
Mm-hmm.
There was a guy called Mr. Bill. Mr. Bill sold candy, bread. He was like basically a roller store just in a truck. And he used to park in the parking lot. And my buddy, who was a really good friend of mine named Sal, he would ring the bell. That was his job. That's how Sal made money. I still remember all of this stuff, man. He would break down the boxes, throw them in the trash for him, and that was his side hustle. How again, like I told you, man, we were very creative with trying to make money when we were kids. We didn't sit back and say, oh, we don't have it. So, like I told you before, we didn't do the robbing and stealing. We didn't do all that stuff, man. We were kids, we just didn't do it. We know it's a different time today, but we tried to stay as positive as we could. Not by no means were we angels. We made some mistakes, but we did kid stuff, nothing to harm anyone else, anything like that. But I think it made us stronger. It made us who we are today. I think without my upbringing and the strength that I gained from that, I probably wouldn't be the man who I am today. So, I don't knock it. Actually, I love it. Believe it or not, and again, you got to remember as kids, you don't know that you're in a bad situation. You have no idea. You're just kids having fun. And when everyone is in the same situation, you think everything is good.
So you talk about how your mom had you guys doing different things outside of the projects.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about your brother being at
East Tech.
Mm-hmm. And you didn't want to follow, it sounds like you didn't want to follow in his exact footsteps.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Oh, okay, so how did you go from East High to South?
Well, we moved when I was in 7th grade that summer at Central. We actually moved from Longwood to I still remember that address, 7415 Cornelia. which is 4 streets north of Superior,
Okay.
which is the East High School District. So now I had to make the decision whether I was going to continue going back down there to go to East Tech, or just get to know the people in the neighborhood and go to East High. So as a freshman, I went to East High.
Okay, so East Tech was out, East High was in, and how did you end up at South?
Funny, most of my friends from Central either went to East Tech or went to South High School. My girlfriend at the time went to South High School.
Oh, so you followed the girl.
I was missing my girlfriend, that was number one. But I was at East High, it was a lot of gang fights. There was literally a gang fight once a week at East High. There was probably 8 to 10 different gangs in one building.
Okay.
Now I'm coming from the projects, and I wasn't used to that. And here was the final well, there's 2 things. One, my JV football coach was the actual basketball coach. Coach Reeves was the basketball coach at South High School. But just doing our conversing all the time, talking back, he started mentioning that he was at South High School with the people that he knew that was playing basketball for him. My brother being in Detroit was sending me a lot of things from Detroit. And I had a blue sheepskin coat, and I had some blue snakeskin Adidas. And I remember coming from class one day, and a guy who didn't even know me, he would say, "Hey man, are you Jarvis?" And I'm like, "Yeah, what's up?" He was like, "Look, I don't even know you, but guys are talking about robbing you." I went and got my things out of my locker, went home, told my mom, "You got to get me out of here." Transferred me out, and I went to South, and the rest is history.
I want to tell you a little something about us. We're the Boogie Down Production crew. And due to the fact that no one outside there knew what time it was, we have to tell you a little story about where we come from. South Bronx, the South Bronx, South Bronx, the South Bronx, South Bronx, the South Bronx, South Bronx, the South Bronx.
Many people tell me this style is terrific. It is kind of different, but let's get specific. KRS-One specialized in music. I'll only use this type of style when I choose it. Party people in the place to be. KRS-One attacked. You got dropped off MCA cause the rhymes you wrote was whack. So you think that hip-hop had its start out in Queensbridge? If you pop that junk up in the Bronx, you might not live, cause you're in South Bronx.
We would be out in the streets playing football all day, every day, man.
Okay.
We stayed outside playing football. I mean, I think that's what motivated us to play football even more. Now, early on, especially once we was younger, you had the 30th Projects, you had Longwood, then of course you had 40th, you had Carver Park, you had King Kennedy. They really didn't mix. We really didn't mix over. So we kind of stayed in our Longwood neighborhood to play football. We started switching over once we got to middle school. Once we got to middle school at Central, now we're going to school together. Now we're getting to know each other, and then that's when we finally started going up to, at the time it was Lonnie Burton, and that's when we would come up here and play football for Power 7. Now they're called the Renegades. These projects right here literally look exactly the same.
Right.
Like this is like, you know, we talk about our boys Keeley and all and Snoop and all those guys. They live right here on this strip, man. Right here on this strip. A lot of other guys that, you know, helped me get better at what I was doing in life all grew up down here, man. This is back, it's called Lonnie Burton now. Rest in peace to a great councilman back in the day, Lonnie Burton. But this used to be POC. This is what we used to come to do. Basketball, swimming, boxing, lift weights, anything that was recreational, man, this is where we used to come. Okay. And then the field, of course, these were the courts out here. They used to have the summer basketball games, man, and that's, you had league, that's where the guys from Garden Valley would come down here. Like, and then that's when they had the midnight basketball games. But when they started midnight basketball, I was off in college by then playing football at Case Western Reserve. But the courts are still there. I mean, this place used to be jam-packed, man. You know, there was no gun violence, there was none of that stuff going on. We was just having good fun. We was kids, man. Playground area, swimming pool over there.
the courts. I mean, this place used to be jam-packed, man. They would have the summer leagues, and it would be teams waiting to play, and we would just get at it, bro. I mean, all of this stuff still looks familiar, still the same. I had a really good friend named Ronald Crable that stayed up here, man. Him and his sister, his mom was like an additional mom to me. We would come across here, play basketball all day, and she would feed us, take care of us, man. I think Ron now moved down to Atlanta. But this right here, this is what we actually practiced. Football, all in this field. This whole field, none of this stuff wasn't turf. It wasn't a stadium. It was just gravel. Gravel, little bit specks of grass here and there, dirt, but we made it through, man. And again, this type of stuff made us tough. You know, she used to be Eagles Nest, and then the Eagles Nest closed down. Everybody came over to POC. We started playing together, and that's when the project started mingling together. And then that's when the battles really began. Half of us went to East Tech, the other half of us went to South High School. And the rest is history. And I know I joke with the guys all the time, man, but it's all love. One thing I can always say about me playing against my friends, buddies from East Tech, I never lost a game against them playing and or coaching.
So I do want to go back. So it sounds to me, and I'm gonna just speak a little bit about myself, and then I'll get back to you, or just a little. So when I was growing up, my mother had us in the projects too, but we didn't know we were in the projects either. I grew up in Akron. I'm still in Akron now, Akron, Ohio. And my mother moved us to Cuyahoga Falls. Mm-hmm. So now we are one of 3 black families in Cuyahoga Falls. So to us, we just stayed in an apartment complex in Cuyahoga Falls. It wasn't until I got older and I realized, oh, that 4-bedroom was Akron Metropolitan Housing Authority, and it was Summit County. So that's how we were able to stay out there. But we had Nintendos. We were the only family that had a Nintendo. Mm-hmm. We had TVs in multiple rooms. So we thought we were rich, but my mother worked 3 jobs, mm-hmm. and she went to school. Mm-hmm. So we knew that my mom worked hard, mm-hmm. to show us a different life regardless of our circumstances. So for me, I work hard because of what my mother showed me, regardless of my circumstance. And so I would ask you, and that's why I said a little bit about me and get back to you, mm-hmm. would you say that your mother did the same thing by having you in those other activities? She changed your foundation. She changed the way your life could have gone, because it would have been easy for you to be in a gang, in a fight all the time, not in sports, going from one school to another school to another school, and even having to do that transition to make new friends and figure out, what do I want to do based off of the people that I am with and around. Did your mom play a major role in that for you by changing your circumstance?
Absolutely, 100%. Coming in, we struggled, okay? And hence, that's why we ended up in Longwood Projects. Mm-hmm. So initially coming in, my mom wasn't really working. And then finally, my mom landed a job with Ohio Bell.
Oh, okay.
Once she landed a job with Ohio Bell, everything changed for us. In the projects, we were probably the first ones to have mag wheel bicycles, a VCR, video games, tabletop handheld games. We was at Children's Palace every other Friday.
I remember Children's Palace.
With Chuck E. Cheese, Yaga Lake, Kings Island. My mom had us going everywhere. Karate classes, taking classes at Caramel House, going to plays at Caramel House. My mom always had us involved in something. But for me, I had to find my motivation of what I wanted to do. So for me, it was always easy. Anything less than what my mom accomplished school-wise was a failure to me. Mm. And my ultimate goal, actually, again, going back, my motivation was always my older brother. When my mother was sitting at the table trying to teach my brother long division, I was trying to learn long division as well. Because to hear my mom say, "Great job, Jarvis," or to have my brother give me the side eye like he's mad at me, because I always wanted to impress my brother and my mom. So those two being in my life here in the projects, as long as I kept striving to be where my brother was and already knowing that I wanted to do what my mom did, at minimum, was my motivation. So knowing my mom from our side of the family was the only one with a college degree. If you asked me at 8 years old, what was I going to do? I didn't know anything other than go to college. If you said, well, what are you going to do after high school? Well, I'm going to college. Well, my mother had a rule. You had 3 options. You can, once you graduate high school, go to college, get a job, or go to the military. Well, for me, I wasn't going to the military because growing up, all of my uncles were in Vietnam War. And I would always hear them say, there's no place for a black man in the military. Mm-hmm. My parents were from the deep South. So hearing that, that's all I knew. So, okay, I'm not going to the military. Well, I didn't want to get a job, but I also know I wanted to play football. Well, I can't play football in the military, but I can play football in college. So I knew I'm going to college.
Going back, if you look right over here where I told you that gas station was,
Right.
There was an ice cream parlor next door. I remember one time going up there to get me an ice cream cone, and I'll keep his name under wraps now, but he stole my bike. He knows who he is.
Right.
He was much older than me. I was probably about 9 or 10 years old at the time. But they caught him. Because everyone knew him by his name, his nickname. As soon as I said the nickname, believe it or not, the police knew exactly who I was talking about.
Who he was.
There's a lot of kids today who's never been outside of their immediate neighborhoods. So that exposure that my mom was giving us at that time was allowing us to understand there is a life outside of Longwood. But also going back and forth to my dad's house in Detroit also lets you know there's a life outside of Longwood.
We've talked about everything you do now, how your brother has played a part, how your mom has played a part, how where you've come from and your coaches and your mentors have played a part in your life. And so where does your dad come into all of this?
That's a difficult one for me. My dad, my mom split when I was young. When I came to Cleveland, excuse me, can you cut? Coming to Cleveland, mom and dad split. It was tough because, again, I'm a child. I don't really know what's going on. But as I started to get older, I started to learn why my mom and dad split. And that was something I always said that I would probably never do in my life. But the difficult part of that is that my dad, which a lot of people don't know, has always struggled with mental health. And that mental health has been something that motivate me to always want to strive better. So now when you see youth struggling and other people struggling with mental health, it hurts me deeply when people make fun of it. Mm. Because it's something I had to learn to deal with my entire life. My dad, I love him, bless him. But when it was time that he needed to be there for us, he wasn't there. But that was due to his mental health issues. Dad is strong, he's smart as a whip. He actually went back and got his college degree. But that mental health side of things is real. And that's what people need to start to understand. And it really hit me because I had 2 young men who played for me in high school that passed away through suicide. One was at South High School and one was at Shaker Heights High School. But mental health, people need to understand that that's real. So when you ask me where my dad played a role in my life, my dad was that role model that I looked up to, but I had to learn from, because I learn from anybody I come in contact with. There's things I learn to take from you, and there's things I learn to leave with you. But I had to understand from my dad, it was mental health that was making him do certain things. So that's how I try to overcome things and keep striving to get better in my life. That's why I continue to try to help youth. And that's why now with our foundation, we're actually taking a step further to add mental health into our organization and things that we try to do.
Sorry, that was a little heavy. I really, I appreciate you even sharing that, because that's a piece of vulnerability that you just shared with everybody who's going to see this. And I appreciate you. I appreciate you taking the time out and being open and candid. And I honestly just thank you for being you. Everything that I read, everything that I've seen thus far, everything you've told me, even not knowing you, I appreciate you. We need more men. We need more Black men and those who you work with out here for our kids so they aren't lost.
Sixth grade, CMSD Schools District came up with, I think that you had already had the School of Arts, but then they came up with the Cleveland School of Science. Well, to get in those schools, you had to take a test to get in. Now, I think everyone had to take the test, I believe. I know for a fact my mom made me take the test, so I don't remember if I had to take the test or if my mom made me take the test. But either way, I wasn't trying to pass the test. I just did what I did, what I knew, and I looked up and I ended up passing the test. So in sixth grade, I still remember my sixth grade teacher was Mr. Kenya. Over the Christmas break, we got a letter saying, congratulations, you've been accepted to the Cleveland School of Science. Report the beginning of the third quarter, second semester. I didn't want to go. My mom was like, oh no, you're going. So I ended up going that second semester. And I would be honest with you, I hated it. And the reason I hated it or disliked it so much was because no one from Longwood is here with me. Remember, my comfort zone was Longwood. I met some new friends. Actually, I can tell you there's a guy, he's an alpha as well now, Qasim Jami. He was probably one of the first people I met at the school. So I'm there, I'm miserable. They don't have any sports. Our gym was literally, it had carpet on it. It was just like a rec room basically. So I said to my mom, I want to play sports. Central has sports. It's in the neighborhood. It's where my friends are going. And I cut a deal with my mom. And I said, Mom, I'll make a deal with you. I'll cut my jerry curl if you allow me to go to Central. She was like, okay, I'll make that deal. You can have one or the other. You want to have your jerry curl instead of Cleveland School of Science, or you can cut it, because she didn't want me having a jerry curl. That was something my dad had given to my brother and I. Mom said, if you cut it, you can go to Central. I cut my jerry curl, went to Central, and never looked back.
And I would say this is when I really started taking off in sports. I had my gym teacher, who was my basketball. Actually, back then we actually had flag football, and you can actually still say Central High School. Because believe it or not, this used to be the high school, and then they built the new East 10. I think they moved the kids there, and this was Central Junior High School. Started off on this level as a quarterback. At heart, I was always a running back. But then I think it was going from, in Little League, how things were back in Little League, man, it was, if they didn't know you through an older sibling, cousin, uncle, brother, somebody, they just put you on the line.
Okay.
So my first year going off of football, this is when we started to cross over a little bit. Me and my really good friends, kind of like my cousin, his name was Dale, we going up there to go off of football. But we went over and, bless his heart, rest in peace, Coach Galloway, put us over there with the linemen. So we were like, dude, we're running backs, we're not playing the line. So we were selfish and we quit. We walked back over to the projects. We went back to Longwood. Then the next year, we wanted to play so desperately, we went back again. And guess what? This time they put Dale with the running backs, but put me back with the linemen again. So I said, okay, I'll take one for the team. And that's when it started growing on me that, sometimes leaders lead from the back. You don't always have to be in the front to be a leader. But that's when I realized those running backs behind me, they can't run without me. So they need me. I don't really need them. And that was my way of getting myself through it, because I hated playing on the line, but it was something I had to do for the team.
The time I came close to selling drugs, I can remember it had to be roughly around 10th grade going to 11th grade. I started working at the Garden Center, Broadway Garden Center, right up on roughly 78th and Broadway. And I noticed, at that time we had just come off on JV. I was playing JV at the time, football and basketball championship runs. And probably 15 to 20% of our team turned to selling drugs. And this was during the height of the crack epidemic. A lot of lives were messed up, turned upside down due to drug use. But drugs was the hot thing at the time. The guys would come to school with brand new cars, brand new nice clothes. And, we seen those things and we wanted some of those things. But we chose to stay the course. And then I want to say maybe going to junior year, senior year, things got pretty hectic, or maybe it was right after graduation. I believe it was before graduation. But my best friend and I, we thought about maybe selling drugs. So we actually had, we known one of our good friends who was kind of one of the big guys that everyone bought from. So we actually went to the bank, pulled money out of the bank, and rode around actually looking for drugs to sell. And needless to say, there was what they called at that time, there was a drought. So we had gone to someone in Garden Valley looking to buy, and they told us it was a drought. Went down to another buddy of ours that we knew down in the 4-year projects, and also told us the same thing, that there was a drought. And I can recall him saying to me, but there was a guy over in King Kennedy that had some yellow dope, but he wouldn't mess with it. So I took his word for it and said, okay, we're not going to do it. Now, I can recall us two getting back in the car and driving, and simultaneously we looked at one another. And we both said, have you noticed that it's weird that any time before we could find crack cocaine anywhere at any time? But the one time we go looking for it so we can start selling it, we can't find it. That has to be a sign from the man upstairs. And we both said, this is our sign to let us know this is not for us. We went back to the bank, put our money back in the bank, and we never turned around and looked back for it again.
You went to college, so can you tell us where you went to school?
Right. Initially, I was supposed to go to Alabama State.
Where your mom went?
My mom went to Alabama State. My uncle, Leon, played the trombone in the band at Alabama State.
Okay.
I was destined to go to Alabama State. My senior year in high school comes along a guy named Dennis Harris, Coach Dennis Harris. He never pressured me about anything. He just talked to me about Case Western Reserve. I was being recruited by a lot of schools across the country. And honestly, and a lot of people didn't even realize this, I had no clue what Case Western Reserve was. I just knew Coach Harris went there or coached there. So they ended up inviting me to a game. So I went to the game, I was on the sideline, I was like, oh, okay, this is nice, but I don't really know if it's for me. I took a recruiting trip down to Ohio Wesleyan, and I met two twin brothers, Damon and Derek Cody. Still good friends with me today. We made a bond there, and that bond kind of came from, here's how things work. His mom was a substitute teacher at South High School.
Okay.
She was my art, I think, band teacher or something, music teacher or something, one of the two, I believe it was. And there was one of our classmates who was acting rowdy that day. And I stood up and told him, dude, you need to be quiet and treat her properly. What if this was your mother? Mm-hmm. I never knew that she went back and told them that. So on our trip, they were like, are you Jarvis Gibson? And I'm like, yeah. And it was like, my mom talks about you all the time. And I'm like, who's your mom? And it was like, Miss Cody. And I was like, the substitute teacher? And they were like, yeah, my mom thinks the world of you because what you did one day in class. now I have to make a decision where I'm going. Really don't know where I want to go. I actually went there. But it was also due to my girlfriend at the time, because as an athlete,
Always follow the girl.
here's the thing, as an athlete, we were able to apply for schools for free.
Okay.
Well, she couldn't keep applying to every school I was applying to, but she had already got accepted to Cincinnati.
Okay.
Cincinnati is not far from Ohio Wesleyan. So I said, okay, well, I'll go to Ohio Wesleyan. She'll be at Cincinnati. We'll be close to one another. I get to Ohio Wesleyan, and I'm just not feeling it. I'm missing my girlfriend. I'm missing my mom. I'm missing home. So I was trying to find a way out. And I can recall coming back during summer ball, and a truck of Caucasian gentlemen rolled past in a truck. And that's back when we had the black Bart Simpson t-shirts.
I remember.
And I was wearing one of those, and he yelled out the truck, "Bart Simpson is not black, you nigger." I never told anyone that. I went back to my, and actually I stayed on campus in the House of Black Culture. I called my mom. I said, "Mom, I'm just not happy down here. Can you call Coach Harris and ask them, do they still want me to come to Case?" My mom called back and was like, "Coach Harris said, when can he get here?" I went to practice the next day, and coming back from break, I just packed my things up and left. And I felt bad because I never told Coach Hallway that I was leaving. Now let's go back to how things work. I become the head coach at South High School. Guess who comes to recruit kids at South High School? Coach Hallway. We end up talking. He mended things over, and this is what he said to me, and I'll never forget it. "Jarvis, you were an 18-year-old kid. I really didn't expect anything different. But we're good. I've been watching what you've been doing." And actually, I ended up getting some kids to go out and play for him. But he was like one of the best recruiters I've ever met. Great coach, great person, great man. I'll never forget Coach Hallway because he gave me an opportunity.
Your story here, man. There used to be a Burger King back there. I remember my mom telling me, "Do not walk up there to that Burger King by yourself." Well, of course, I was hard-headed. I had just made me a couple nickels or whatever you want to call it. And I'm walking back with my burger and my pop and my fries. And some guy had rolled past me on his bike. I paid no attention to him. Next thing I know, he just flew right back past me and snatched my burger out my hand, man. Burger and fries gone. You talk about a kid pissed off. And I couldn't go home and tell my mama because I wasn't supposed to be walking up there no way.
Now I go to Case. Football is easy for me. And I say that not being arrogant or anything like that, but that's just what I do, is football. I also thought academia was also easy because that's what I do. In high school, I really never studied. I would literally look things over on my bus ride to and from school and ace the exam. I tried the same thing when I got to Case, and that's when I got my first F ever, and that was in calculus. And I tell my student athletes the same story all the time. I got that F. I remember calling home to my mom crying, and my mom, this is exactly what she said to me. She was like, "Suck it up, boy. You're not the first person to get an F, and you won't be the last person to get an F." I was ready to leave Case. And I went to, at the time, Mrs. Chisholm, Jackie Chisholm. And I wouldn't talk to her and said, "Look, Miss Chisholm, I want to transfer out of here. My mom went to Alabama State. I want to go to Alabama State." And this is what Jackie Chisholm said to me. "Jarvis, have you ever been challenged before in your life?" And I had to think about that. This was the first time ever I was really being challenged, and I was ready to run from it. And she said, "I don't think you should leave, but you make your own decision." And once I talked to my mom, I talked to Jackie Chisholm. Coach Harris didn't even know I was ready to leave. But those words from Jackie Chisholm, which is now Dr. Chisholm, is the reason I remained at Case Western Reserve.
So how was that going from South to
It was a
Ohio?
huge difference. It was a huge difference from going from South High School to being challenged academically at Case. Case is no joke. It's one of the top academia schools I think in the country, definitely. What I was used to at South High School, because again, I didn't have to study. Mm-hmm. That's one of the things I tell my students today, student athletes today. A lot of them don't know how to study, and I didn't know how to study. And there was one of my suite mates, Dean. His name was Dean, and he was my first ever tutor. And when I went to him, and the only thing it was, from where I grew up, number one, it showed weakness from our growing up to ask for help. Mm-hmm. I didn't know how to ask for help because typically I was the go-to person that everyone asked for help from. Mm-hmm. So for me to ask for help, I didn't know how to ask for help. But once I learned how to ask for help, because there was times where I'm trying to study for calculus and it's literally taking me 2 or 3 hours to learn one problem. I would get with Dean because he was also helping me with accounting. But I would get with Dean, he would explain it to me and it would come to me in a matter of minutes. But then there was another really good person that ended up helping me with my math. She, come to find out, she went to South High School, but she was 3 years behind me. Mm. But when she came in, and I was in my junior going to senior year, and she was a freshman, and she was tutoring me in math. So between her and another good friend of mine, Damon Benjamin, who tutored me in math, I learned now how to study. And I think what really helped me get to where I needed to be, going from first semester to second semester, from second semester to my second year in college, you had to have 25 credit hours to be eligible for football. Mm. I think it was 25. Yeah. So my freshman year, that first semester, I was taking 4 courses. I remember that. And then that's when I found out something ahead called freshman forgiveness.
Love freshman forgiveness. You can retake a class. That grade drops off.
Once I learned about freshman forgiveness, it was a matter of, okay, do you struggle with all 4 of these classes in these finals? Or do you just focus, let the 2 that you have F's in, do you really want to fight and get a D in those classes? Or do you let those go and just focus on the other 2?
I want to say 6 years old. First got here into the projects. I want to say we were 6 years old. And the first person I ever met when I came outside was a guy named Jamal Brown. Today, he's still my best friend.
Okay.
Like, we still talk periodically. He actually lives down in North Carolina now.
I played my first year, I played my second year. I was actually ineligible my 3rd year. I've never been ineligible before. That's when I truly took off to say, I need to finish strong. That's when I started talking a little bit more to Coach Harris. And then there was also a track and basketball coach named Bill Sudak. Bill Sudak, I think, knew everyone in America, to be honest with you. He can easily pick up the phone. Next thing you know, you'll have a job interview. Then that's when I started interning with BP Oil downtown. And then that's when things really started to turn for me that year that I was ineligible. Now I had nothing but time to focus on what I need to do academically. And Coach Harris always told me it wasn't how, because I asked Coach Harris one day, Coach Harris, when you used to talk to me about recruiting, you never talked to me about football. Why is that? And he was like, the reason is because, Jarvis, I know you can play football. I'm more concerned about you once you graduate graduate college, what are you going to do? And those were the things that kind of motivated me to continue on and get stronger academically while I was at Case Western Reserve.
By trade, I was an engineer with the telephone company. My history and journey and story was actually a kind of an odd one or interesting journey that led me to the telephone company. Back in Detroit, my dad was an electrical technician for Western Electric, which was a vendor for Michigan Bell. Once we moved here to Ohio, my mom worked in the accounting department for Ohio Bell. And believe it or not, I never even thought about working for the telephone company. And then eventually, I believe it was in 1999, I believe it was, I ended up becoming a switch equipment engineer for, at the time, SBC. And then I moved to transport equipment engineer when it became Ameritech. And then I finished out my career as a power equipment engineer for AT&T. I was with the phone company for 19 years, loved every minute of it, and I would never do anything different. But that was my journey and career as an engineer, as an equipment engineer for the phone company.
So you've done a lot with football. You've done, and you talk about all of your coaches. I'm just mesmerized by the fact that you can remember almost everybody's name. I'm sitting
They're
here
still
like,
in my life.
Everybody's name. But so I would personally say that football has opened the door for you, or opened some doors for you. At least it got you to a place where you were able to meet some of these people. So where would you say, or when would you say that changed for you? When did football kind of become your catalyst?
I would say football was just something that I did. Growing up in Longwood, we played football all day, every day. The kids today, they don't go outside, but when we were there growing up, football is what it was. And I started playing organized actually in middle school. That's when we had flag football, but then we also had, that's when we would go over to, at the time it was POC, which is now Lonnie Burton, and played for Pile 7. But going from playing to coaching, when I go back and talk to my friends, they would always say, Jarvis, we kind of figured that you would be a coach one day. Because I was always that type of player, no matter, I can remember being a case where we had a kid named Takashi. He was from Japan. He wasn't one of the best players. He was just there. But I would always work with Takashi after practice. And I can remember we were playing Oberlin and we were up big, and coach wanted me to go back in the game. And I literally turned to him and said, why won't you allow Takashi to go in? Because you don't really need me to be in a game, but he comes to practice every day. Allow him to go and play. Mm-hmm. And Takashi actually went in the game and played a little bit. But that's when it started to, it was like, okay, I think maybe one day I can become a coach, but it really didn't really hit me. Then once I graduated, I want to say graduated 95, 96, and I was sitting at work one day, and a guy named Coach Roski called me out of the blue and asked me, he's like, hey, he introduced himself, said, I'm an alumni of Case Western Reserve as well. I reached out I got your name and information from Coach Harris, because he was also his receivers coach. And I know that you can play the game, but can you coach the game? I said, I never thought about it, but I'm willing to give it a shot. I went and met with him in his office. Next thing I know, that was my first step. He gave me my first stardom into coaching high school football. Worked with him for 3 years as a position coach. I was then diagnosed with leukemia. Once I was diagnosed with leukemia, I kind of took a step back. I took a step back that year. I was still kind of going up to practices and helping out a little bit here and there, but not really full-time coaching anymore. And I really started missing the kids. Mm-hmm. And so when I was diagnosed with leukemia, they actually gave me 5 years to live. They said that's typically the lifespan with leukemia. That's the average. So now what do? I took a step back. I have to just focus on life, period. And then that's when I went back. I actually called Coach Roski and said, hey, look, I need these kids more than they need me. I would like to come back and join the staff. He didn't have anything for me at the time. He said, the only thing I have left maybe is a volunteer coach. Okay, well, I'll shop around and see what happens. He ended up getting let go. I went back with the new head coach, Coach Bill Powers. Coach Bill Powers, we came in, he called me. He said, we did basically interviewed all of the players. We did a survey and said, from that past staff, who should you guys want us to come back, bring back on staff with us? And across the board, all the kids said Coach Gibb. And it was like, well, he didn't coach last year. That was the problem. He should have been coaching with us. I went and I interviewed with him. I can remember sitting down because their cafeteria auditorium was kind of the same thing. Basketball court, everything was probably basically the same thing. We sat in that gym and we started the interview, and I started to try to explain who I was. I was trying to sell myself. And he looked me in my eye. He's like, you can keep talking all you want to, but the job is yours if you want it. The rest is history. When I say this guy taught me so much when it comes to coaching, because he asked the question, what side of the ball do you want to coach on? You're not going to do both sides. I said, offense. He said, what's your ultimate goal? Do you want to be a coordinator? Do you want to be a head coach? What do you want to be? I said, a coordinator to start, eventually head coach. He said, okay, I'm going to put you in my hip pocket, start giving you some things. I'm going to send you down and you control freshman team. But I'm going to start giving you some things so you'll be learning from me, so you'll be ready to take over. And that first year back, we won 15-0 and won a state championship.
I think right over here this was a bank. That's where I first opened up my first bank account. I think I was probably 19 years old. So my mom kind of had us on the right track, man, doing some good things, learning about things here and there as we were growing up. We got to see mom pay bills, write checks, things like that. I think those kind of things sprung us off my mom gave us a great foundation, man, a great foundation. And what my brother and I have been trying to do with our kids as well as take that foundation and continue to build on it, man, and get better and better.
How I ended up getting into the real estate game. Over the last 5 years of my career at AT&T, I found myself sitting idle quite a bit. I would get my programs and my assignments and projects done, do a little bit more reading, and then I just found myself with a lot of idle time. And at that particular time, my mentor, AV, who was also Coach AV, who was also my basketball coach from high school, he was in the real estate game, heavily into the real estate game, doing very well. And I remember him, always mentioning to me what, things he would be doing and how he would be doing it. So I just started listening to him quite a bit as he would talk to me about it. So I asked him, show me a little bit more. And then an opportunity came along. And I would say probably 5 years prior to that, he was looking to retire and to get out of the real estate game. So he was selling off some of his properties, and he tried to introduce it to me at that time. But I just believe I wasn't ready at that particular time. It just wasn't my time. So I truly believe I got into the game when it was the perfect time for me, when it was finally my time to get in. So someone contacted me and said that they had a house that they were it was in short sale, and they were looking to purchase the home, or wanted to come to me to see if I wanted to purchase the home. Told me what it was. I knew about the property already, so I wanted to take a look at it, and then I ended up purchasing the home. And once I purchased the home, I can remember AV always telling me is that once you buy the first one, you're going to start searching for the second one immediately. So actually, my first deal that I had on the table, I actually closed another deal prior to that initial deal. And then I ended up getting another property after that. But what I was looking to do was that I was noticing that every year AT&T was doing a cutback. They were doing a layoff. And I knew eventually, time was going to be up there. But what I noticed is that I was going to work every day for someone else versus not myself. I could not pass the work that I was doing at AT&T along to my son. And this is when I started doing a lot of reading up on what they call generational wealth. And once I started noticing generational wealth and understanding it and what the true definition of it was, I then said I wanted to leave generational wealth starting with my son and I. So what I did was I started purchasing real estate. So in my quest to build generational wealth, I chose the avenue to go through was real estate. So that's what I did. And I only purchased newer homes. That way I figured I can get the use out of the homes, and then I can then pass them down to my son. And then hopefully then my son can pass them down to the next generation as he sees fit.
And then going back to the coaching side, I was there with Coach for about 3-4 years, and then he decided to retire. Mm-hmm. And then that's when Coach Allen, remember how it goes full circle, because Coach Allen was my JV coach at South. He had been calling me, asking me, saying, hey, look, I got the new job over here. Can you come over and help me? I didn't want to leave because I had just went out and helped recruit a strong team. So I stayed a couple more years. And then once Coach decided to say that he was leaving, and Coach Power said he was going to resign, or retire rather, it was when I said, okay, Coach, do you still want me? Absolutely, I want you. Come over here, help us out. Went over there the first year. I was the offensive coordinator, assistant head coach. And we went 5-5 that year. He retired. I took over the next year. And I was there as a head coach 4 years. So we went city championship, runner-up, city championship, state playoffs. And then that was the first and only time in school history for South High to make the state playoffs. And then that's when I went back to Chanel as the head coach. I was there for 2 years. And then I left there and then went to Shaker for 8 years. First year we went 2-8. Second year we went 8-2. Third year we made the state playoffs. And I want to say that second year we actually had 11 kids go D1. So that was the largest recruiting class I've ever had of kids to go off to college.
Are you coaching now?
Yes, now I'm the one of the assistant coaches down at East Tech High School. But I also run it through my foundation. We run a program called Beyond the Field, and we're working in that program with all of their student athletes over at Warrensville High School now. And I thank the superintendent, Donald Jolly, as well as the athletic director, Brian Swift, for giving me the opportunity. They seen the vision that we had with working with youth. They invited us over, and now we're running the program over there now. So these 3 trophies here are the trophies that won when we won the city championship at South High School. So our second year, we went back to the city championship. The team that we beat, I think 40-something to 0, we ended up playing in the city championship. The week before the game, my entire offensive line got suspended because of a fool fight in the cafeteria. We ended up winning second place, city championship. And then my third year as head coach is the year we actually went to the state playoffs. So there was a law there because you can do one or the other, you can't do both. We went to the state playoffs, and then my fourth and final year, we went back to the city championship and won that game as well. And I kind of talk about this all the time, that we beat John Adams in the city championship 26-14. My last year in high school, we beat John Adams 26-14 to get a piece of the city champions, the tri-champs.
So your foundation, one of the biggest things that I saw was go to high school, go to college. And then it had this nice pretty chart, go to high school, go to college. So would you say that you named your program based off of your mom's rules?
The foundation, yes. Now, go to high school, go to college, that's actually a national program for the fraternity that I became a part of.
Okay.
Which is Alpha Phi Fraternity Incorporated.
Okay.
that's one of their national programs. So I just kind of spearheaded that program for my local Delta Alpha Lambda chapter.
Okay.
Met some nice coaches, great coaches, met some great kids that I'm still mentors to today. I pride myself on, I would probably say, if I've been coaching now for 27, 28 years, I probably have about 15 of those young men who have become alphas as well. From South High School, from Chanel, as well as Shaker. Every location I've been at, I believe I've touched their lives enough for them to say, I want to be an alpha like Coach Gibson. Here's my actual book. Some actually accolades that I won. This was one of our past presidents, Reverend Hilton Smith. He was our president. And then this was actually a Greek basketball game that we was actually the runners-up playing against. This is actually a mold of my actual hand, holding up my sign, the one when I first crossed.
Tell you, the biggest influencer for me was my older brother. My brother Alejandro. He didn't realize it at the time because my dad wasn't here with me physically, but he was my motivation. Whatever my brother did, if I didn't top that, for me it was kind of like a failure. Because the older kids, you always want the older kids to pick you. So my thing was, I want my older brother to say, hey, yeah, give me my younger brother. So that was made me tough because I was in the house battling with an older brother. So when it came to, doing other things, I kind of knew what I was doing already because he had gone through it. So that's why I try to do things now, because the things he taught me, my mentors in my life that taught me, one of my greatest mentors, man, was Coach AV. He was my basketball coach and Coach Reeves. Rest in peace, Coach AV. Coach Allen, Coach O'Block, No Tech, Coach Markowitz, Coach Smith, like I told you earlier, definitely Coach Washington, because that was my very first coach ever. But then we get over there, you get Coach Galloway, those guys. Those were the guys who kind of raised us. So I took all of that knowledge that they taught us, and I try to instill those things from those men, and put into my own son, Jarvis Gibson Jr.
Okay, starting here, this is my years when I played Little League at Powell 7. This was my jersey here. This was my high school jersey. Now this is when I played the offensive line and the defensive line. And then finally, once I get to high school, now I can play. This is my varsity jersey. This is the All-Star game jersey that I played with. And the way that we have these things set up here, well, we can come over to this jersey, and then this was my college jersey. So these are my trophies from playing Little League, Powell 7, played basketball as well as football in junior high. Outstanding performance, that's the year we went second in the league. Playing football, flag football, was a quarterback. I was the most valuable player there. Then this is getting into junior high school, played football. Went to the city championship in football. Actually, we beat the Senate. The score, it was 152-0. No one ever even scored on us until we got to the city championship game. That one is this is my all-star team trophy there. And you have trophies down there, football as well as basketball. We actually won a city championship my junior year in basketball. And then as we move over, you'll see more trophies from junior high as well as high school. And if you take a look at this one up here, this is academia things. So you can see outstanding proficiency in American history. That's Future Farmers of America, National Honor Society, medals that I won. This one is United States Army Reserve, National Scholar Athlete Award. So we were doing things, my mom always made sure we did things on and off the court. So some things that they started creating for us was actually keychains. I still have mine. And this is the one they made for me as being a captain for the South High Flyers in high school. He was the man in our program. The kid rushed for 3,400 yards his senior year, 41 or 42 touchdowns. He ended up going to Virginia, playing for University of Virginia. And then he actually had a few shots at the pros. This was when we made the state playoffs. All of the kids took the football and had it framed for me, and everyone signed. So everyone on that team signatures on this ball. And I appreciate each one of those kids. That year, we only had 25 players on the entire team, and we went to the state playoffs. I also was the track coach. We actually made it through regionals, and we was actually one bobbled handoff away from making the states. These here are actually trophies of young men that I coached in high school. This one here was DeAndre DeScott. He went to University of Akron. He played there. Then this one was Ron Rock Johnson. I actually got him to sign it for me. I'm still waiting on the other two to come sign the jerseys for me. Played for me at Chanel. He ended up going to University of Kentucky and had a stellar career there. And then a young man that I spoke on before, who was pretty much everything for us the year we went 15-0 and won a state championship, was Tony Franklin. And this was his jersey, and I'm still waiting on Tony to come sign a jersey for me as well. My vice president, who is now going to become my president of the foundation, when he was with the Jets, he would, bring us up and get like Mark Sanchez signed these. This was number 36. I think that was Cromartie. And then there's different people. Like I know Ed Reed's signature is on here. Michael Vick's signature is on here. So we got some pretty good guys' signatures on that football. Again, someone who's real near and dear to me, Mario Marino. Once he came into my life, he's seen some of the work that I have been doing. From coaching at South High School, from coaching at Chanel High School, from coaching at Shaker High School, from actually playing in college. And what he did was he took all of that information and came up with the title of it, Jarvis Gibson, the coach who cares.
I'm kind of flabbergasted and stunned. When were you diagnosed with leukemia? Because you said, they gave me 5 years to live, like it was 10 years ago.
It was September 15th, 1999.
My God.
I remember the exact date.
Are you about to make me cry? That just tells me that God had a greater purpose for you.
I believe so.
It's been 23 years and you are still here trucking and giving it your all. And after this, I would like to know you. I would like to know you. I feel like if God has his hand on you like that, I just want it to overflow. Just overflow onto me. That is amazing.
So going back, when I was diagnosed in 99, my girlfriend at the time, we were trying to figure out, because I had to actually have my semen frozen. Because the drug they put me on was new. They didn't know the long-term effects of it. But graciously enough, we sat down and said, okay, we need to leave a legacy, namesake. And we decided to have a child. And that's when Jarvis Jr. came along, 3/16/05. And if you notice right here, I wear this all the time. It's actually a picture of me holding him the day he was born, that his mom had that framed for me. But that's what really motivates me to do what I do today, because that foundation, I want to leave that legacy. And that's when Zeus and I were talking about generational wealth and the things that you're going to leave for your legacy. So everything I do now, I would be honest with you, I don't need anything. I may have a few wants, but need, I don't have a need. everything I do now with my foundation, with my real estate, everything I do financially is for Jarvis Jr. because I want to basically leave everything for him. Because as I said to Zeus, think about if our parents left us $1 million, where would our life change and how would it be differently? Well, my goal is to leave my son more than that, where he can continue to grow and just take that. So what the foundation my mom gave us, we're building on that foundation. So now we want to leave a stronger foundation for my son and my 2 nieces. So now they can take that and take that to another level. And then their kids, and that's when generational wealth comes along. And hopefully we can get those things done.
You got Jamal Brown. That was actually the first person I ever met, was a guy named Jamal Brown. The second person I ever met was her. I'm not gonna use her government name, but everybody knows her as a Jip. But actually Jip's mother, Miss Gray, is like a staple in this community, man. She was like everyone's mother. You know, she took care of us all. It didn't matter who we were. But Dale Jackson, Corey Watkins, Sal, those guys are the guys who was like my immediate core. Spook, Kevin Moon, those were my immediate core. Those were the guys who I helped raise and they helped raise me. And I think, that's what got me to go to where I am today and where I am today, because of the things we went through together. And, things, and again, none of us are perfect, man. None of us, we made mistakes in life. We took different paths and avenues, but I think where we are today in our lives as men, we're in a great place now. That's why I still reach out to those guys. They reach out to me. Nothing's changed, man. We can pick up the phone and talk today and act like we just seen each other 2 weeks ago. Nothing's really changed, because that's what it's about, man. When you come from down here, the people that you roll with and you're around and who grow up with you and grew up with you and who went through this struggle with you, we all know what it is. We know what, people nowadays say, get it from the mud. You can call it what you want to call it for, man. We didn't know that we was in the mud. We was rolling around and playing with the mud. So we took that mud and we took the mud and built houses out of it. That's the way we did things with it. So, some people say take lemons and make lemonade. Well, we took the mud and built houses, and that's what we do, is want to keep building. That was our foundation, and that's why I started the Jarvis Gibson Foundation, because I want to come back and give back to where I'm from.
For all my beautiful people, just keep smiling and keep dreaming and keep God first and keep praying and just let the starlight, just let the starlight, just let the starlight. Let the starlight, just let the starlight. Yes, I promise it's gonna be alright. No matter what, just let it shine bright. My baby, 'cause you're my starlight. Starlight, they contemplating it all night. Flying high, dripping above the skylights. Hit by the clouds amongst the stars that would be out of sight. To total lunar eclipse, so of course the time right. In case you wonder what I mean when I say starlight, that's what I call whoever struggled had a hard life. Both beautiful, young and restless, y'all need a guiding light. As the world turns in the shadow, I know bright lights. But bright lights can affect your vision like some car lights. Like in Rocky Sambo, lock me from the blind side. I ain't just Washington Carver or even Einstein, but you can't move forward if you blind. Catch the hindsight. Stop the pleasing the physical, get your mind right. And I ain't trying to be no hypocrite, it's a hard fight. We want it all, no, we know we can't afford the price. It's your future, so I'm praying that you turn on the light. Starlight. Yes, I promise it's gonna be alright. No matter what, just let it shine bright. My baby, cause you're my starlight. Just let the starlight. Just let the starlight. Just let the starlight. Just let the starlight.
Never thought you'd see the day they leave, no foresight. Waited all night, never turned off the porch light. The day they left, oh yes, they took off with your heart, right? Twisted the blade in your chest like a sharp knife. Confunction day I lost punk and was broken hard twice. I promised day I lost mama that froze my heart ice. Cold anemic, looked to Jesus to heal my heart Christ. Discovered that I was covered by grace a hard price. Starlight, starlight, so bright had to say it twice. You was left in the cold, who better to break the ice? It's time to stick to your atoms, don't even take a bite. You played enough games, cropped out, tired of shaking dice. Dear mama, I love you, know you my heart, right? Had to take some self-inventory to get my card right. And now I gotta go my own path and follow God's light. Had to learn to take my own advice and let my starlight.